Okay, for lab number 6, the first thing you'll need to do is open StatCrunch from My Stat Lab in the left-hand menu. As you open StatCrunch, you'll have the option to open, we're just going to open the StatCrunch website because we don't have data for these problems. We're not working with raw data for these ones. We are just working with either summary data or working with StatCrunch itself. So we're just going to open a blank data page here. And the first thing we're going to do, we need to create a confidence interval. And confidence intervals are under stat. Now for proportions, although we do use the normal distribution, which seems like z-stats, we will use proportion stats for this. So proportion stats, we're going to use one sample, and we have a summary for 9.1 number 25. We have summary data. Now notice it asks you for the number of successes and number of observations. This is the X and the N. For 9.1, number 25, we have a situation where we had a survey of 2,306 adult Americans aged 18 and older, and we found that 417 have donated blood in the past 2 years. So 2,306 is the number of observations. And, oops, let me turn my number lock on there. And number of successes would be the number of people who were found to have donated blood in the past 2 years. That's 417. So we put in the total number of observations as well as the number of successes, or the number of the count of the people of interest. Now, confidence intervals. The default is hypothesis tests. That will happen in Chapter 10. For right now, we're just doing confidence intervals. Remember, with the level of confidence, the textbook will tell you 90%. That, of course, means 0.9. And so 90% needs to be entered as a decimal here. Now, basically, that's all you need to input. You can just leave the method as is for the default. You don't need to store in a data table. You don't need a confidence interval plot, although it can be kind of interesting to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and click that just so you could see it, although it's not necessary. If you go ahead and do the confidence interval plot, you're welcome to include that in your lab report as well. Now we click Compute, and we see the results here. And notice we have one of two results. So in order to see that confidence interval plot, this is what I have. So what it's showing me is, it's not showing me the distribution with the confidence interval plot, but it's just showing me the point estimate along with the range of the confidence interval. But what we have here, of course, is we have the sample proportion, which is calculated for us, and that actually is the answer to part A, a point estimate for the population proportion. That's the sample proportion. We have the standard error, which is not really necessary for the answers to this problem, but we also have the lower and upper limit. A reasonable number of decimal places is usually 3 to 4. So I would probably answer this question by saying 0.168 and 0.194 as my lower and upper limits. So we have 9.1, number 25, essentially completed. That's the only StatCrunch portion. The other 3 portions will require some verbal responses. Now the next problem for this lab is 9.2, number 19. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now you do want to save these, of course, before you close them. You'll need to include them in your lab report. So remember, options, save, and then go ahead and name it something where you can find it later. I'll close this for now, and we can do 9.2, number 19. For 9.2, number 19, we're doing confidence intervals for the mean, which requires us to use the t distribution. So we'll use t-stats, one sample, and again, we have summary data. Now it requires a sample mean, sample standard deviation, and sample size, and then we'll switch to confidence interval and put in a level of confidence. So let's read the problem. We have a sample mean. The sample mean is found to be 18.4. The sample standard deviation is found to be 4.5. And don't forget that when you have the sample variance given to you, take the square root of the sample variance in order to get the sample standard deviation. If you are told that the information you have is variance, You cannot just put it in here as variance. You do have to take the square root and put it in as the square root. Now the sample size for this one, initially we have a sample size of 35. So let's type in 35 here. Now our confidence interval, the first task we have is a 95% confidence interval, which is the default here. So we'll say compute. And we get something like this. Now for the next two parts of this problem, we need to adjust things and compare the results for our lower and upper limits. So we'll just go save for this one. We'll save this initial result. And then once we have it saved, we can edit. And initially they're asking us to change the sample size to 50. Okay, so we'll change the sample size for part B. And for part C, we're being asked to change the level of confidence to 99. So we'll adjust the level of confidence. And again, all three of those results, you can save and then edit the result again in order to get a new result. Now, they also ask in part D, if the sample size is n equals 15, what conditions must be satisfied? That is not one where you actually have to compute the confidence interval. You need to answer that question verbally in your lab report only. So you will only have 3 saved results for this. And that's it for lab number 2. Don't forget to save your results, create a lab report, and don't forget to share your lab report and email the link only to me. And you should have some saved results as well as some verbal answers. So don't forget to type in your answers in the lab report as well.